There's this old proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That's the thread that twines our Exceptional Minds with RoboKind podcast. We want to connect you with the voices, the people, the movements, the work that's happening to promote, inspire, and achieve inclusive and celebratory moments for all. I'm Brian Baggs, CEO of RoboKind. Welcome to our episode. In this episode of Exceptional Minds with RoboKind, we are joined by Laurie Peterson, the founder and the executive director of Diagnostic Learning Services and eDiagnostic Learning, as well as the co-host of the internationally recognized podcast, Let's Talk Learning Disabilities. With years of experience assessing and supporting students from elementary age through adulthood, Laurie has become a sought-after expert on learning disabilities such as dyslexia, ADHD, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and more. She is passionate about equipping educators, parents, and students with the knowledge they need to navigate learning challenges successfully. Laurie also serves on the executive board for the North Texas chapter of Children and Adults with Attention Deficit and Hyperactivity Disorder. We'll explore in this episode Laurie's journey, her insights from hosting Let's Talk Learning Disabilities, and how we can strengthen the connection between educators, parents, and students to ensure that every learner gets what they need and support. Laurie, thank you so much for joining our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I love that I get to be here.
Us too. So, I'd like to begin, if you don't mind. Can you unpack a little bit more about what Diagnostic Learning Services and eDiagnostic Learning is? And then eventually we'd love to know how you got into that space. But maybe let's just start there for some of our listeners who may not be aware of what that is.
So Diagnostic Learning Services is our brick and mortar practice where we do testing for learning disabilities, ADHD. We test kids starting in kindergarten all the way through adult. eDiagnostic Learning was born, believe it or not, it was born pre-COVID, but it really didn't hit till after COVID or during COVID. And that's our virtual assessments. So those we can service students and adults across the country. And we give the same psychoeducational evaluation that you would get if you had walked into our office. We just do it virtually. And it's amazing. It's been phenomenal. And being able to reach people outside of our neighborhood has been really, really rewarding, because I'm amazed in other states how hard it is to find help.
It is, right? And that's been part of the challenge, is that there's been so many bottlenecks to being able to get some of that diagnoses, which we know are kind of paramount to eventually getting to that spot of getting the right kind of services. So it's fantastic. Now, you guys are in more than just one neighborhood, though, right? Like, you guys have multiple locations, yeah?
We do. We're in the state of Texas, but we have 5 offices. Okay. And then our main office is in Plano, North Dallas, and all of our online testing we do here out of this office.
Yeah. So how'd you get into this space? Like, I'm sure you just didn't wake up one day and then all of a sudden you were in all these places and being able to support folks all over the country. How did you get here? How did this start?
So my background is in special education. And interestingly enough, I remember back being in high school knowing that I wanted to get into some kind of child psychology, something along those lines. And in hindsight, it's all because I was undiagnosed ADHD and I was a struggling student. So I was that kid that I help now. Yeah. But I got my degree in special education. I started out teaching. I loved it, loved working with the kids. But I always just was like, but why? Why is this hard for you? What? I wanted to crawl inside their brain and poke around. And so I did. I went back to school and got an additional degree in assessment. In Texas, we're called diagnosticians. In other states, psychometrists. And in other states, who knows? But sure. Bottom line is in using standardized assessments to diagnose learning disabilities and then to make recommendations on how to help. To me, that's the most important part, because the testing and the diagnosis is great. But if you don't know what to do with it, it's pretty useless. So I did that in the schools for a little bit, and I loved what I did, but I didn't love where I did it. I didn't like all the restrictions that were placed in the, I don't know, I just felt very again, the ADHD, I felt very caged. And so my dad was an entrepreneur and he had encouraged me to, he's like, throw your shingle out there and put your name on a shingle, see what happens. And that was 20 years ago. And here I am. So it took some time to get where we are today. My husband came along. I met my husband about 8 years into it. He jumped in and helped me. And since he came on with more of the business side, because I'm an educator. So that's kind of where the growth started.
So that just like that's a fascinating story, and somewhat like a lot of the stories that I get to hear, where there's these polls, these things that you feel like you ought to be doing, more, you want to do more, and it just kind of seems like things kind of unfold, and then well, I guess this is what we're doing, and this is where we are. But it did make me think about you as a special education teacher. If I was a student in your class, I think that those pairings with folks who have that disposition, even before the training comes, that are curious and want to understand why and kind of get into that, can kind of make some of the best learning moments for kids. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the more you know about how a student learns and, where their strengths are, I think you can be so much more effective in the classroom.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm thinking about, for some of the folks who listen in, it's like the credentials help, the understanding helps, but it almost originates with this passion to do it well.
Oh, absolutely.
On the front end. So kind of tell me a little bit, like, was it scary to kind of jump out of the traditional like four walls of a school district to put that shingle out there to see, like, I know that part of that cage was the motivation to go, but was it just all like, let's ride, let's go for this?
You know what? I am a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, and I happened to be in a position in a district that allowed me to cut back a little at a time. So my first year doing this, I went 80% with my school district and did 20% private. So I had like a day a week I could mess around with it. But by nature, with my ADHD, I'm very much a risk taker. Like I like the thrill. So it was really exciting. And then I slowly got to sort of turn it over. So I kind of had that safety net if I needed it. But I'm very lucky. It's very rare for it to happen like that. But to me, it means it was meant to happen that way.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And so you're standing up this practice. You're providing value to families and students and school systems by getting it right on the diagnoses. But then let's talk learning disabilities comes. How did that kind of come in, and how did that become so prominent and regular for folks who listen in, their families and educators alike?
Well, we find that we answer a lot of the same questions every day, right? Yeah. And I feel like I'm saying a lot of the same things on the phone to a parent every day. And so we thought, well, what if we just shared some of this very basic information with the general public? I mean, if someone's looking for information on dyslexia, I want to be able to give it to them, but give it to them in a way that I know they'll understand. That will make sense. And I also want to bring in the people that are the experts, like dyslexia therapists and things like that, and help them explain in words in ways that make sense. So many times you go into a school special education meeting and there's all these people there, they're throwing around all these acronyms and there's all this, then they're shoving papers at you to sign and you're smiling and nodding thinking, I don't have any idea what's happening with my child. Yeah. And so we wanted it to be a place where you could get just some really good foundational information. And it's been fun. I love it. I mean, it's been an outlet. And I, in a million years, would have never thought that I'd get over 100 episodes because, again, ADHD, right? You start something, never finish it. Yeah. But I'm having so much.
Way far out there, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. But it's been fun. And I feel like we've done, we've had some great guests. And like I said, we've had pediatricians and we've had therapists and specialists in all areas, a lot of ADHD, of course, because that's closest to my heart. But it's where we get a lot of the questions. So I do feel like we're answering those questions that people have that sometimes they're just afraid to ask.
Yeah, I, would give like our listeners an encouragement to go check it out. I listened to one of your more recent episodes where you had an autism specialist come in. And I think one of the ways that your podcast stands out is that I think you do a good job of like trying to frame things in ways that people can explore, they can seek understanding, they can have something that they can walk away with, um, and I think that's really fantastic. It's not just about
Thank you.
giving out the research or the stats or the this, but it's like make it real for me, right? Like how can I use this information? And so,
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. No, the applicable, or the application is what's important for us.
yeah. So, I think one of the things that I've noticed in some of your episodes that I got a chance to listen to, and so I'm always looking for new things to pick up. And as I'm running through and doing errands, I've got to be doing multiple things at once. And so podcasts are perfect for me. Um, but one of the things that I noticed that you do is that you really do a good job of breaking down some misconceptions so that people can start to think differently. What are some of the biggest misconceptions from your perspective around learning disabilities that you try to address and maybe in your podcast or in your daily work?
Well, the one myth that we bust, and that I feel like this is something I say every day, is that dyslexia is not writing letters and numbers backwards. And
Yes.
I will even still make a joke if I reverse letters. I'm like, oh, I'm so dyslexic today. Like we all do that. Not dyslexia. Has nothing to do with dyslexia. Dyslexia is a language-based learning disability where you struggle to decode and sound out words. Has nothing to do with how you write them. It could affect your spelling, but if you write the letters backwards, that's totally normal to the end of second grade. After that, it's something else. So that's my biggest one. That's the one I
Yeah.
preach the most frequently. But I think, the fact that ADHD medication will make you a zombie, that's a big one that we try to
Mhm.
dispel. And then that, the hyperactive is hyperactive, and that if your child isn't climbing the walls, then they don't have the hyperactive. And that's not it at all. It can be your social butterfly of a girl, or, there are other things that make that hyperactive, or that create that hyperactivity, impulsivity diagnosis, not just, the kid who's falling out of their chair all the time. And it's not just boys.
Yeah.
So those are the big ones I think that we hear, and that I feel like we talk. And it's never too early. It's never too early to diagnose a learning disability. A lot of people think they have to wait till their kids are fourth grade or third
Yeah.
grade, and that's not true. The earlier you can intervene and start to remediate, the less of an effect it's going to have as the kids get older.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that like that early intervention that if that's one of the goals, um, being able to kind of take down some of the stereotypes of getting an assessment. So like what do you normally do to like encourage folks to embrace this opportunity if they're kind of maybe like I'm not sure, I feel like how could you know, like my kid's only in kindergarten, maybe there aren't all kindergartners just like on their own different path, like what kind of advice would you give for someone to is trying to navigate some of these talk tracks that may be in their head that are keeping them from coming in to getting an assessment?
Well, and honestly, there are times where we say maybe we should wait a year. I think it might be a good idea to wait a year. If you've got a kindergartner with an August birthday, which in Texas means you're really, really
Yeah.
young, then
Yeah.
developmentally you're not really on track with the other kids. So really just listening to where their concerns fall. But if they have concerns, why not do it and just get some peace of mind? The beautiful thing about doing a private evaluation is that it's yours to do with as you choose. You don't have to share it with anybody. You don't have to give it to the school. You don't have to tell the teacher. It's yours. But it's information, and information is power. So if you know that your child is a little bit behind, you still have to tell the school, but you could go get them extra help. You could start implementing some different things at home. So I think it's that information. Or if everything is great and we're like, your child is great, they're smart, there's no concerns, yet the teachers are having some concerns, this might be a really good tool to say, look, maybe it's you, not him.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
right. There's
Um,
multiple components in this equation right here, and so let's maybe put them all on the table for exploration, right? That can be very
exactly.
empowering itself.
Absolutely. So I just think that information is very powerful. And when you know that it's yours to do with as you choose,
Hmm.
there is some relief in that, and like peace of mind. Like, okay, if the school doesn't have to see this, or I don't have to give it to anybody, and I just can take this home and marinate on it and decide what I want to do with it, then usually that makes them feel like, okay, this is probably a good thing. And usually if they're calling us, they have a concern. And
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of the mom gut. Like when your mom gut
yeah,
is speaking, like
yeah,
it's probably right. There's probably
yeah,
something. It may not be what you think it is, but it's probably something.
yeah, yeah. And it's like, one of the things that we say in our household all the time is that like if knowing more allows you to do more, then why not go out and know more? Like, let's bring the
Absolutely.
knowledge in, if there's even a chance or an opportunity for us to navigate better, right? Like,
100%.
knowledge is power, to something you said earlier. Uh, so what are some of like, so you're working with students with all ages, yes? Like you kind of see them all throughout that. And I guess that's part of it. Like we're on a journey of getting feedback from those around us and in our world and in our environments that may cause people to come in at different times in their life. Yeah.
Well, and think about the demands of life and the demands of school increase as you get older. So the
Mhm.
strategies that you may have at a younger age are working and are sufficient. But as the
Yeah.
demands increase, those strategies may no longer work or be
Yeah.
as effective. And that's where you start to see those struggles later in life. It could be later in school, like second or third grade. It could be eighth or ninth grade. It could be college. It could be your first job. And so, but they hit at different times. And
Yeah.
so just when you've kind of hit that wall and think, wow, like nothing that I'm trying is working, well, then maybe there's something going on.
Yeah.
And so it could be any age. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's so true. Like we know of a lot of folks personally, in my family and in our neck of the woods, that transition from a really self, kind of supporting environment for elementary school, but then we're marching into the executive functioning in a middle school environment. We get to unravel and see that there's maybe a lot of gaps that were kind of covered up because of the system of elementary school, but now we're in middle school and we're seeing that we've got some additional challenges, and so yeah, all sorts of things may create moments for us to have some reflection and get to learn a little bit more. So
Absolutely.
what are some of the most common challenges that you see when it comes to supporting students with dyslexia or ADHD, that might lend themselves to a knowing and then to maybe even a recommendation for educators that may be working with these students?
Well, I think as far as like the challenges that the students are having is,
Sure.
difficulty. A lot of it, interestingly enough, a lot of what we see are the secondary. We see a lot of anxiety. We see a lot of those
Yeah.
emotional, side effects of the academic or the executive function struggles. And so by the time a parent usually comes to us, they're already seeing some of that anxiety, the I'm so
Yeah.
stupid, I'm dumb, you know, that's the first thing, which is fascinating. But
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
kids are telling you something, right?
Yeah.
The difficulties that they're having in school are now manifesting
Yeah.
emotionally. And
Presenting this
so,
to, but its root may be a little bit further back, right? Yeah.
yep, yep. And I think that, teachers are doing the very best that they can, right?
Yeah.
They've got a class full of kids that learn differently. And I do wish if it were up to me that like every school would just teach reading in a multisensory Orton Gillingham sort of way, so, because
Yeah.
everybody's gonna benefit from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But those kids with dyslexia right now are not benefiting from the way it's being taught, and so they might be faking it until they can't fake it anymore. So
Yeah.
seeing them kind of hit those walls, just like I said, sometimes we've get kids in first grade that are still struggling to assign sounds to letters and
Yeah.
rhyme words. Sometimes they can
Yeah.
get all the way to sixth or seventh grade, and it's just the comprehension now is it's too much, and they can't. And now when we really dig in, we find out, well, gosh, you really can't sound out any of these words.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's teaching the parents and the educators about those sort of red flags and what is truly something to be concerned about and what is something that's may just be an academic gap. And so to me, again, knowledge is power, right? The more you know, the more you can help. And just helping them see that. I think the executive function piece too, I feel like every school should have some sort of executive function curriculum for kids because
Yeah.
everybody needs to know how to manage their time and plan and not procrastinate and prioritize. And some kids can do that naturally and others can't. And those
Yeah.
ones that can't, it's incredibly frustrating. And that's again where you see a lot of the anxiety and depression kick in.
Yeah. It's like two things that seem relatively arbitrary on where we draw the line of what we teach in school is, social skills oftentimes are executive functioning. And I don't know why we made an arbitrary line where we just did like the math and the science, but if you don't have some of those other kind of rounded out things, like you're not going to be able to push in to find the success with the academic side. And so
Nope.
I agree with you, RoboKind. We're in that same space of actually trying to fill that gap as a curriculum provider, saying like these were arbitrarily left out of the set.
Hmm.
Maybe it didn't rhyme with the three R's, which weren't even R's, but they're still necessary, right? Like
Right.
we gotta
100%.
we gotta create space for that. But that's a big part of
100.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's frustrating, but we can't rewrite the curriculum. We can't, if we
Yeah.
can't make those changes
Yeah.
in a district wide, then we can only offer the services. And again, it's all about informing so that people know what is out there. How can I get help?
Yeah. Yeah, and so I bet in some of those instances, though, like you're making assessment, right? You're providing some pathways that may help these families find some more success. But I guess there's probably an element of advocacy that is associated with that too for the students. So can, can you tell me a little bit like what your experience is like for that and how that may play out for families and
A
what does
hundred
that look
percent. Advocacy is huge. So, for the younger kids, obviously we talk to the parents about how to advocate for their child, and we really work with them on the kind of language to use. Like I have written a script for a parent and said, just send this email. These are the words you want to use because this is going to get their
Yeah.
attention. But as the kids get older into those later middle school, high school years, I want them to be a part of this process as far as like reviewing the testing results, understanding where their strengths or weaknesses are, because they have to learn how to advocate for themselves. If
Yeah.
going to another room to take a test so that you can read it out loud to yourself and not bother anybody is important, is going to help you, then you need to be asking for
Yeah.
it. And if someone says no, you need to be able to say, but it's in my plan. Like
Yeah.
you've got to learn your rights. And a lot of kids are like, oh, I don't want to make a stink. I don't want to be embarrassed. Like I'm embarrassed. I don't want to go. So really encouraging them to see the benefits far outweigh. I mean, their friends could care less where they go. They just don't
Yeah.
realize that. But
Yeah.
really, because then they go to college and their parents can't advocate for them anymore. Now it is just up to them. And so that self advocacy is so important. So really working with them, even at a younger age, having the parents help say, make sure you ask your teacher. Did you ask your teacher? Did you let them know? Because it's okay.
Yeah.
And I think the faculty and the educators can really help with that, because if you have a teacher that's very welcoming and very accommodating and very, warm and fuzzy about it, then that's going to encourage that student to keep coming back. But the first time a student gets shut down,
Yeah.
that may
So
really affect their self
yeah.
advocacy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's so important.
Yeah. One of the things though that well, I just love everything about what you just said. Like, I think that oftentimes people may wrongly assume that, well, maybe my, diagnostic assessment just tells me where I am. But it sounds like one of the things that's unique about diagnostic learning services and the eDiagnostic learning is that, but it doesn't end there, right? Like we want you to have this information so that you can then learn to get the resources you need to find success. And, in the way that you talk about it, the way that you own that for them and the tools that you provide on the advocacy side is pretty wonderful, Laurie. You
Thank
guys are doing
you.
good work on that.
Thank
Families
you.
need that help, right?
I agree. I agree.
And sometimes they don't even know that they need that help, right? But they also need to be told that you can be an advocate, right?
They don't know. A lot of parents don't know that they have the right to ask for certain things. I've had so many parents come to us over the years that have had testing done somewhere, whether it's the school or some, and they don't even know what they don't even know what they're like, I'm not really sure what they were diagnosed with. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And to me, it sort of supports my theory of the testing is useless unless you know what to do with it.
Do with it.
So for
Right.
us, the second half is almost more important than the first, because it's where
Yeah.
it's going to take you now.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, like, can you brag a little bit? Do you have any stories that you love most about some of the work that you've done through diagnostic learning services that, some of our other folks can be inspired to do the extra work of going beyond just the assessment and into the support? Any of those stories that you'd love to share with our audience?
I have a really cool story, and it's actually one of our podcast episodes if you go back through. But we
Oh,
had a
okay.
client. He was an adult, and he came to us. He was not his work. He had been diagnosed with dyslexia, and he had requested some workplace accommodations, and they had not only denied him, they fired him.
Ooh.
So he And throughout this whole process, we saw him a couple times because with testing, it has to be done every so many years in order to have current documentation so that you can get like extra time on any kind of standardized test. So he decided he was going to go to law school. So he needed it for the LSAT. Long story short, he went through law school and he is now becoming, he sued his workplace. He won and used that money to put himself through college. Now he is a disability rights attorney.
Wow. What a story. What a story.
Amazing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's somebody who used all of their experiences and found things to redeem and reclaim and
your disability does not limit what you're capable of.
Yeah. Wow. That is a great story.
Yeah.
How about
it's my
that?
favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm gonna have to go peck around and find that podcast later.
I feel like a proud mom. Like it's the coolest thing. Yeah.
You should be. Okay, so one of the things that I'd love for you to be able to share too is we're getting ready to wrap this up. If people wanted to find out more information about the types of services and assessments that you guys provide, where do they go to find that stuff? How can they get a hold of you?
Our website for the online testing, which gives you all the same information, is eDiagnosticLearning.com. And our podcast website is ldpod.com. I have to think about that for a minute. Spell it out. And honestly, I think that's the other thing, just really quick, is that if you guys have just questions, there's a contact us form on our website for both of those. If you just have a question about like, what is this, how do you test for this? Or this is what happened with my child. Do you think this looks legit? I can't tell you how many tests I've just looked over, school reports I've looked over and said, no, I think they did a great job. Or gosh, I really think they're missing one thing. I'm happy to do that. I don't charge for that. It's because I love what I do. So if you have questions or just want to shoot me an email and just ask how something's done or a specific question about your own situation or your child, I'm happy to answer those too.
Well, fantastic. And thank you for that. We'll make sure to include that information in our podcast and in our social posts on that so that they can come and do that too. So the last question that I'd love to just ask you is that, a lot of our listeners, what would you encourage them to maybe take a first step towards building exceptional connections that may help them with their work, stay motivated, stay encouraged? I know that's a big part of it too. You've obviously surrounded yourself with a great team. What advice would you give someone who's listening to this? What's the first step to making an exceptional connection to help them move forward?
I think, for me, I think it's finding your passion and figuring out what you're passionate about and making sure that you're immersing yourself in your life and your career in things that you find very encouraging and very rewarding. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I think using that, then it makes it so much easier to reach out and to make those connections, right? And I think for me, it's understanding that everybody struggles with something. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
If you have a struggle, if reading is hard for you, if math is hard for you, if focusing is hard for you, don't worry, because someone else has an issue that you may not have, and there are ways to strengthen those connections, and then advocating for yourself. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself.
That's fantastic. Well, Laurie, thank you so much for being on this podcast, but even more than that, thank you for the work that you're doing in Texas and beyond, and
thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you so much. It's been great.
That wraps up this episode of Exceptional Minds with RoboKind. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and found inspiration to bring back to your own learning community. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to connect with you on social media, so follow RoboKind for more resources and updates on inclusive education. Until next time, keep supporting and celebrating every learner, and remember, together we can empower exceptional minds.